Welcome to the Investor Empowerment Series radio show, empowering your real estate investing with techniques, opportunities, and information, minus the BS and sales pitches. Now, please welcome the host of the Investor Empowerment Series, Joe Mueller, from the Tough as Nails Investment Syndicate. Joe Mueller.
Welcome back to the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. This is episode 21. Today we've got a special guest on the show, Co-Host Dan Clarton. He's sitting with me here today. We are going to record and go through some of the questions that you guys as listeners have asked myself via email or in person to maybe help elaborate on some of the topics that we discuss in the podcast. Dan, welcome. Thank you for helping me out today.
No problem, Joe. Thanks for having me back.
And we are totally winging this, by the way, so if it doesn't come out good, I apologize in advance. But
yeah, it would have been nice if you would have gave me the questions ahead of time,
I love it. All right, so what I did is I compiled a list of some of the questions I've gotten in the last few months since I started the podcast. I get text messages, I get emails, get people asking me questions in person, which is great. That's why I'm doing the podcast, to educate people and build relationships. So we're going to go through we got about 10 questions or so that I'm going to have Dan's opinion and mine. We're going to go through these and just see what you guys get out of it, and us. Maybe we'll learn something in the process.
So are these actually right and wrong answers? Or we're just basically giving some opinion, right? Like,
it could be a wrong answer, but no, I'm sure there's no right or wrong. It's our own opinions of the way things, or the way the questions could be answered. The correct answer could be different. Who knows?
Okay, well, I'm just making sure nobody holds this as total gospel and finds themselves in a problem. They go, well, Dan and Joe said.
Full disclosure, our answers might not be 100% accurate. So check with us in person if you're talking regarding a specific deal or opportunity.
So to be clear, we're not accountants, we're not lawyers, we're not giving legal advice.
Full disclosure. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. All right, so the first question came from an email actually I got, which is not the first time I've been asked this. This is why I brought it up. Joe, thanks for all the great information you put out on your podcast. I really like what I'm hearing because it sounds like it's actual real information and you're out there putting out information and actually doing it yourself as well. I've been investing in real estate for about a year. I have 2 rentals that I purchased through conventional funding, and I'm under contract on a third. I've been using a real estate broker. My question is, do you think it's worth me getting my broker's license to help find properties and potentially list and sell for others as well and make some extra cash? Or is it better off as an investor to not keep a license? That was from Josh B. via email. And like I said, I've gotten that question a bunch of times from new investors and experienced ones alike. And these are just my opinions, but everyone's got a little bit different of a business model that they put together when they get started investing. If I can speak from my own experience, which is all I can really speak from, I got my license because I didn't have access to the right types of data and information when I was just getting started in investing. So the MLS provided me an opportunity to view properties that were potentially good investments, also gave me the opportunity to vet out potential comparables that might be a comparable for that property I was interested in purchasing. I could see other investors' rehabs if they had it listed on the MLS, so I could see what the quality of work that was getting done and what my competition was, if you want to call it that. And that was years ago before, we had all the access to what's on the internet nowadays, which at some points you can literally get a virtual tour of the interior of entire property, from your desktop computer. If I were to go back in time, I wouldn't have changed the fact that I got my license. I think it was a big benefit. And it also has helped make me some money through listing properties for other investors and working with investors to find other opportunities. So there's been an advantage of getting that commission. On the opposite side of that, this comes at a cost. So if you're interested in getting your broker's license, you got to take into account the fact that typically with most brokerages, there's monthly fees, there's MLS fees in addition to that. So you're paying a monthly fee to your brokerage, regardless if you close a property. You're paying an MLS fee upwards of $100 a month, sometimes more, just to have access to the MLS. You also have to pay insurance fees. They call it E&O insurance, which stands for Errors and Omissions Insurance. It's kind of like a broker liability policy. So if you screw up on a deal for a client, they can jump in and protect you, or defend you in a case should something go wrong. So I guess in summary, I kind of parlayed both businesses together as I was not only working with investors in addition to buying my own property, but I continued to grow that side of the business and just changed my personal business plan in order to justify the license, because originally it was just me by myself, and then we grew into a larger company. But that goes into, there's a lot that goes into that, including staff, payroll, assistance, all things that need to be considered if you want to get a broker license. If you want to be successful at it, it is a job and it takes commitment in addition to just utilizing it for those access or those resources that it provides. So I guess the answer is it really depends. You can build anything into a successful business, I believe, if you really put your mind to it. But I don't know what your individual goals are. And if you think you want to work for someone else and help them find opportunities or list houses for family members and friends, then it might work for you. And that's kind of my 2 cents on it. Dan, what do you think about that?
Joe, as I was listening to you talk, I was kind of reminded, I don't know that you really need your license. You need to know somebody with a license.
True.
It's kind of like a boat. You don't really need a boat. You just need to have a good friend that has a boat.
Right.
And then you're good for the summer, aren't you? So, I guess the way I would see that is by you said Josh?
Yeah.
Josh
B.
I don't know.
We're not going to give out last names.
I don't. It sounds like Josh might have a job or a career of some sort, and he's investing in real estate on the side. Mm-hmm. So to take on all the time and energy to get a license for what purpose? If you're going to list houses and do that, like you said, to be successful, you got to dive in. There's a lot to know. There's a lot of marketing to be done to find listings and chase things. And it sounded like he was mostly looking at it for his own interest. And
right.
Like you said, in today's day, because of Zillow and because of Redfin and all the HomeSnap, mm-hmm. there's just so much information that's readily available that while the, having, quote, MLS access, which sometimes I hear investors kind of feel like, well, if I just had that would change everything. And I don't know that that's true. The other aspect is some of it has to do with what your method is of finding properties. So if the MLS is the only place that you're shopping, the only store, so to speak, and you want to put in your own offers and do like that, I guess that'd be okay. But there's a lot of disclosure mm-hmm. that's involved if you're ever looking at off-market properties
right.
or, someone's got a house and you go to meet with them. You always have to tell people that you're licensed. Mm-hmm. And with being licensed, this is going to sound, I don't know how to say it so it's going to sound right, but you're not purposely telling people lies or wrong information. But when somebody says, what's my house worth? Mm-hmm. The answer might be different that you'd give them, your opinion as a broker than an unlicensed person looking to find a discounted property, at a deal, so to speak.
I totally agree. And that's one of the things that I think is a part of that large decision of an investor taking on that brokering license is the disclosure aspects. They hold you to a higher standard because the general public sees a broker as somebody that has more knowledge than them about property and the pricing of property and how to, buy and sell a property. So a perfect example is if you were to walk into a property that you've gotten as some type of a lead from whatever your source is, call it a friend or something, and you're interested in purchasing that yourself as an investor, and the owner of that property, who already knows you're a broker, so you've disclosed that, which is required, asks you what you think it's worth, and that you believe that property to be worth $100,000, let's say, you're essentially required to tell them that the property is worth $100,000, even though you might want to buy it for $50,000. So now you're kind of backpedaling. Well, how do you explain? The right way to do it is be completely honest and say, well, I think it's worth $100,000, but I'm only willing to pay $50,000. Does that create, bigger challenges and obstacles as an investor? I would probably imagine that it could.
Well, and just a prime example would be that might be the real answer, and that's how you might feel. But as an unlicensed investor, I may pull some comps off of Zillow or Redfin mm-hmm. for houses very similar to that sold for $75,000 or $80,000. Right. Now they might have needed some work. Maybe they weren't all rehabbed and all done nice. And I might feel comfortable saying, well, here's some houses kind of like yours that sold for 75, and yours needs this, this, and this. I really can only pay 50.
So the real challenge in that situation is perhaps you purchase that same property regardless of what the comps are, whatever. But as a broker, I've told that owner that it's worth $100,000, and I buy it for $50,000. And then let's say 3 months later, after I've done my rehab and I'm going to go ahead and flip that property, I list it on the MLS. The market's changed a little bit. It's an upswing right now. The market's been better generally throughout the U.S. Values are increasing. And let's say I sell that property for $125,000. Well, now there's a potential liability there as an investor and as a broker because it's going to look like...
Yeah, you told me it was only worth $100,000.
Exactly. So maybe to answer that question is, again, back to what I was saying, and I believe you agreed with me, it kind of depends on what your plan is, but if you really want to be a real estate investor, it might be nice to have a license for some of that data access, but nowadays you can get your hands on almost anything that I'll be able to obtain on that MLS, minus the access to those properties, and that's not even true all the time, because some of these properties you can still... some of these properties, depending on who the seller is, they will set up showings now through different mediums on the internet where you can get in the property without even being a broker.
The other thing just kind of dawned on me is a lot of real estate is about leveraging money, but it's also about leveraging time. Mm-hmm. Particularly if you have a career and you do something other than real estate full time. So if you have your license, you'd be inclined to be the one pouring through the listings and setting up all your searches and doing all that stuff, where there's no limit to the amount of agents that are licensed that I have met. They go, this is what I'm looking for, find me this. For example, I bought a house earlier this year, right around the corner here in Carpentersville, and that opportunity came to me from a licensed real estate agent as a pocket listing. Mm-hmm. Well, if I had my own license and other people know I have a license, why would you be looking for properties for me when you know I'm an agent?
Right.
So either I got to go it my own way, or I might have 10 agents, 20 agents. Every agent I talk to, I go, hey, if you get a pocket listing, call me first. I'll pay cash. Right. You can have both ends of the deal, right. Blah, blah, blah.
Well, you hit on a great point. Let's talk about what a pocket listing is and how that broker still benefits and exactly what transpires if you were to buy a property as a quote-unquote pocket listing.
A pocket listing in this particular instance was the agent had a listing on a property. He hadn't yet put it live on the MLS because he figured, well, let me see who I know in my circle of influence that might want to buy this. Mm-hmm. And because I come in unrepresented, I'm not looking for a commission. And frankly, I'd like to make sure the person that brings me that deal
absolutely
is going to be paid handsomely. And the best way to get paid handsomely is to have both ends of it.
Right.
And so that's why that's a great sale for them. Not to mention, if that agent brings me the deal, when it comes time to rehab it and resell it, if you brought me the deal, then you get to list it. Mm-hmm. So you're going to make money 3 times. Right. You're going to make money as the selling agent and the buying agent on the front end, and then you're going to make money again as the selling agent on the back end.
Right.
So agents have every reason in the world to bring opportunities that aren't regular quote retail deals or whatever to their investor friends for those reasons.
Right. And I also want to bring up another point. I actually heard this on another podcast, so I don't want to take credit for this statement, but I deal with a lot of it as a broker myself. I deal with a lot of and this hits on the point you just brought up. I deal with a lot of investors that are looking to maximize the opportunity to save money, which I completely respect and understand. And a lot of times when it comes to working with a broker, they're looking to cut corners, out of the commission, or maybe look for a kickback out of the sale, as kind of a caveat for working with them and maybe bringing them the opportunities for business on both sides. And when I say that, I mean the broker finds the opportunity, the investor purchases it, the investor says, well, I'm going to buy 10 of these from you, so, kick me back a little bit of the commission on the buy side, which is legal, or on the listing side, they want to list at a lower amount. And I heard this great statement a couple weeks ago from another investor on a podcast, and he said that's the exact opposite of what you should be doing with these brokers. Because if you've got a guy out there that is pounding the pavement, scouring the MLS...
That's totally ridiculous. Hey, I got an idea. Hey, Joe, I want you to find me houses. I want some kickback. And then you got somebody else you can call that doesn't want a kickback. I'm wondering who you're going to call first.
Agreed. But what I was getting at was that if you've got somebody that's out there actually finding you deals, an opportunity where you don't have to physically, we'll call it, scour the MLS every day, and they're consistently giving you an opportunity, then why would you not pay that person appropriately, we'll call it, instead of trying to cut the corners, even on the listing side. And this is not a self-pitch for myself as a broker, but I thought it was a pretty bold statement because it made a lot of sense to me. Because as a business, every broker is running their own business, and if they work with investor A and they know investor A is always going to want to cut down their commission when they list that house, they'll probably still do the listing, but are they going to put the same amount of effort into helping them find more opportunities? Maybe, but I definitely know that the brokers that are going to get paid more handsomely from investor B are going to be out there pounding the pavement a lot harder to find those opportunities for that guy.
I would think so. And the other thing that I would think is that, the old saying is the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So if I'm just meeting a broker and this is like our first deal and I tell them I'm going to buy 10 from you, I think maybe the fair way to do it would say, I'm going to buy 10. So after you've made big money on 9, maybe the 10th one, sure. It's like, buy 10, get one free, the kind of thing.
Right.
But to start asking for discounts when you haven't really shown what you're capable of doing is probably short-sighted.
And I don't want to beat that up. I don't want to beat up that topic, but that's consistently what happens with, I would say, the brokers we have here whenever we're working with our investors. I'm not going to say that we don't offer some opportunity for discounts, especially for repeat clients, because we do. But when you approach a broker that you want to work with as part of your team, keep that in the back of your head that a good broker that knows investing is going to find you the right properties. Don't cut them short because they're a great resource and doing all that initial legwork for you to help you make more money. And I thought it was just a great statement that was brought up in other podcasts. So
I know, but seriously, when someone's asking for a discount, we're talking about a $140,000 house. Mm-hmm. What are we talking? A couple $1,000s?
Yeah.
At some point, call me crazy, but you're tripping over dollars to pick up pennies.
Yeah.
That's silly.
Sure.
I want my brokers to make as much money as possible.
I love it. Thank you, Dan. Let's go on to question number 2, which is from Chris out of Chicago. His question was, why should I go to these RIA and meetup groups, and what exactly are they? I hit pretty hard on the podcast about attending these local networking groups. So I'm going to let Dan field this one because I think anyone who listens to the podcast knows why I think you should be going to some of these meetups and what they're all about and what they are. So Dan, why don't you jump in here and just tell me, why do you think he should be attending RIA and meetup groups, and what exactly are they?
Well,
that could be a long answer.
Wow,
too.
How much time do we have?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Some of let's start with the RIA groups, because typically when I listen to podcasts and particularly the out-of-town guru types, they always tell you, find a local RIA group in your area. And you're going to find there's going to be, depending on where you live, there's a whole bunch of them. Mm-hmm. And they meet, and in a big city like Chicago, there's ones that might be nearby, and there might be ones that are an hour and a half drive. So you'd want to try to find the ones close to you, start there, and go to them and be open to meeting people, be honest with people. If you're on your first deal or you're on your second deal, I don't think there's any value in walking around with your shoulders back like you got it all going on, posturing that you've done 10 or 20 deals. Just be honest with people. But what I have found, I've said this repeatedly, but for people that are hearing this for the first time, every valuable relationship that I have as it relates to real estate is because of local investors that I've met at RIA clubs and local meetups. I have found contractors because of it. I have found deals because of it. I have got myself out of a really sticky jam with the city of Chicago because of it. I can't say enough about the people that I've met through this over time. And like anything, it's kind of like a diet. You can't expect to not eat for a week and lose all the weight you intended to. So don't go to one RIA meeting expecting that you're going to solve every problem you have in life. But slow and steady over time, and you'll meet people that you'll connect with, and that'll be, your little kind of go-to posse, I call it, because doing a lot of this real estate stuff can be kind of lonely, and you're kind of working on your own. And it's nice to get with a group of people that speak the same language, have the same goals, are looking for some of the same things. And, I mean, the other thing I would tell you is there's many times, and I'm guilty of this myself, it's been a long day, I've done a lot of things, and it's in the evening, and I go, I don't know if I really feel like driving over for that.
Right.
And then I'm often reminded, I can't afford not to go to that.
Right. No, you hit all the great points. I mean, the key factor too. If I could summarize what I heard from him is you're going to, in those types of environments, you're surrounding yourself with people of a similar mindset that have similar goals and are going to help you grow in whatever it is you're trying to do. So it doesn't have to be a real estate networking group. It can be a yoga club if you want to be a yoga instructor. I mean, whatever. But surrounding yourself by people of similar mindset that have similar goals and helping you push yourself to that next level. And through that, you find opportunities. Dan's met investors he's done deals with. I know we met as a result of a meetup group. And look, now we're doing podcasts.
Mm-hmm. Case in point. I mean,
Exactly. All right, great. I think that's a great answer. The second part of the question is what exactly is a RIA or a meetup group, and I'll touch on the RIA. I mean, meetup group is essentially a reference to meetup.com, where you can find all types of subjects and interests and hobbies, everything from rocketry to or model rocketry to, like I said, yoga or real estate. So you can search out sources there for the type of, for any community you live in, there's going to be a meetup group somewhere nearby. I'm sure there's some out there in BOOOOOMMMM, Alaska. I have no idea, but I'm guessing. A RIA group, RIA, R-E-I-A, stands for Real Estate Investment Association, and that's going to be maybe a little bit more formalized of a group where you're paying a monthly or an annual fee of some kind and hopefully getting access to something in return, whether it be just the speakers or seminars and education portion of it, or maybe some resources via the web, or, the attention of the group, the person who runs the group, if you've got an opportunity and you don't know how to take the next step. So there's kind of the difference between the two, and honestly, they're somewhat one and the same. Minus meetup groups don't typically have an annual fee, though they can. And RIAs are specific to, I believe they're actually sponsored by the national. There's a national group that actually monitors. In order to call yourself a RIA, you can join this national association. And they help advertise and market your group and give you curriculum you can follow to help educate the attendees and things like that. Fair answer, you think?
Yeah, I think so. And look, it's a great place to go if you're new, and there's certainly a lot of new people there.
Absolutely.
But there's also people that have experience and are maybe viable people that you can do things together with at some point.
Well, that's a great point, because I got another question. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, but this actually came from a meetup group. A guy came up to me probably 2 months ago. His name was Scott. I met him at a meetup group here in Schaumburg. And he said, I hear people talk about doing JV deals. What's a JV deal? And is that something I should plan to get involved in as a brand new investor? So probably the quick answer to anyone who's heard the term JV, whether it be at a meetup or via podcast or reading about it, JV stands for joint venture, which means you are going to be partnering up with one or multiple individuals to complete a real estate investment transaction, we'll call it. Right?
Well, and it could be one of several different types as well, really.
What do you mean?
Well, you might joint venture with somebody on a rehab.
Right. Fix and flip.
And flip. You might joint venture if you're a wholesaler.
Right.
Maybe I'm a wholesaler and I have a house under contract, and it's in an area where I don't have a strong buyer's pool for. So maybe I've met a wholesaler at one of these RIA groups, and I go, hey, do you have any buyers that you sell to in this area? And they go, oh, yeah, I got several guys.
Right.
And you say, hey, why don't I bring the seller, you bring the buyer, we put it together, and we share the profits.
Right.
For example.
Perfect. The second part of his question was, as a newer investor, should he be getting involved in a JV deal? And I think the answer to that is it depends. Probably yes. But, I mean, that goes into what partnerships are all about and working with another individual or more than one individual. So for anyone who's listening who's questioning, about getting more information on a JV deal, I mean, it's really all about the people that are going to be involved in that particular opportunity, we'll call it. If you're going to JV on a fix and flip property, who's going to be doing the work or who's going to be orchestrating the work, who's going to be providing the funding, or if you're going to be borrowing from, let's say, a hard money lender or a private lender, who's on the line should things go south. I mean, JV deals can get pretty complicated depending on, obviously, the amount of time and money needing to be invested. So as a new investor, I would definitely vet out your potential partners, make sure that everything is documented, whether you're forming some type of corporation or not. I don't think is necessarily mandatory as part of it, but I would probably refer to an attorney depending on the level of liability that you could be involved in on, let's say, a fix and flip, because that's a great example. If something happens and a contractor cuts his arm off with a circular saw, who's on the hook? Well, probably the guy who's got the name, who's on title for purchasing the house. And on some JV deals, one investor does the purchase, the other investor does the work. So all those things need to be discussed and documented, and probably consulted. You need to consult an attorney and insurance person to make sure you're covered correctly. And I don't want to beat that one up too much, but you think that's pretty fair, right?
Yeah, I think that is, and maybe the thing to think about too is, well, who or what kind of person should I be, getting involved in any kind of joint venture with?
Right.
And I always find that the best partnerships are usually made when you're finding somebody that has a specific skill set that you don't have. Mm-hmm. So like in a football team, you can't have, 3 quarterbacks. You need a quarterback, a running back, and a wide receiver. And
right,
they're not all doing the same thing. So, some deals maybe you have a full-time job, you have money and resources, but you don't have the time to chase deals, you don't have time to babysit contractors, and that could be a good partnership.
Yeah, and this particular guy, because like I said, I met him in person at a meetup group. This is Scott, and I know he'll know who he is once he hears this. He was considering doing, once I explained it to him, what a JV was, he was considering doing a JV deal with another investor who had a property under contract, who was looking for him to represent on the funding side. So he was going to go get a loan on the property itself. They hadn't closed on the deal yet, and he would essentially be liable on the credit side, where the other investor, who does many of these routinely, he was just going to be liable on the fix the property up and exit strategy side, which on that particular property, the exit strategy was a lease option. So they were going to acquire the property for, I think, $30,000 or $40,000 under market. Scott was going to actually finance the deal because he had good credit, and the other investor was going to handle the lease option portion and the exit strategy, which was like a 5-year lease option plan. So again, as a brand new investor, marrying up with another investor that you don't really know that well for a 5-year span, that'd be something I'd give a strong consideration to as far as whether or not it's worth that risk, or really getting to know that potential partner and deciding for yourself, obviously, if it's that type of risk that you're willing to take. Because if that goes south, I mean, it's your credit that's on the line, and you're leaving it in the hands of another investor that you really don't know that well.
Boy, Joe, I mean, I can't say enough about that. I mean, I see a lot of anxious investors that come to some of these groups, and there's folks out there, and let's face it, as an investor, we're always looking for, looking for deals, we're always looking for money. And so many times, you meet some new people that are all anxious about real estate, and they've got some money to spend, and, hey, this would be a great thing, I'll do this, I'll do that. Well, let me just tell you, if you're the person with the money, you want to do a significant amount of due diligence on people that you're going to partner on deals with, particularly if it's your money and your credit on the line.
Absolutely.
In other words, do you have a portfolio of projects you've already done? Can we go see any projects that you currently have going? Show me the HUDs of projects you bought.
Great
Show
point.
me the scopes of work on the work you did. Show me the HUD when you sold it. Let me see what the profits were. And I don't want to see the one home run you've ever did. I want to see several.
Right.
And if somebody comes to me and says, well, I've never done one before, well, see, that's not a good partnership because I've never done one either. So,
Right.
I got the money and I don't know what I'm doing, and I got the money and you don't know what you're doing. What do I need you for? Right? So find someone that you feel real secure that doesn't just, talk the talk, but actually does what they say they do.
Well, what if, I like what you just said, I completely agree. What if it is a really, really great opportunity and it's two guys or two gals that maybe don't have that experience level? What's the next step? I mean, let's say investor B.
Hold on. The opportunity is only as good as the people involved.
Okay.
Like, if I gave you, we're Chicago guys, if I gave you the opportunity to buy a Cubs World Series ticket at a smoking good price, except there's a possibility it's counterfeit, that wouldn't be a very good deal, would it?
Okay. All right.
So, measure twice, cut once when it comes to the deal itself and when it comes to the people that you partner with.
Great.
That would be my advice.
Thanks for that response. I love it. Okay. We're going to skip back a little bit. Got another question here. This was another email that came in. This is from Tanya, who's actually based in the Cleveland area of Ohio. She said, I'm doing my first rehab. Should I be getting a general contractor or should I be calling around and hiring my own subs in order to get the rehab work completed? And that's really the only, I don't have any more information on that opportunity, how much work the place needs, but so should she be getting a general contractor to complete a rehab or hiring subs? That's kind of an interesting question, isn't it?
That's, woo!
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of unanswered questions there. How big of a project is it?
Right.
How much money do you have?
Right.
How much time do you have? I mean, are you borrowing hard money and you're paying lots of interest on a daily basis? Are you kind of a weekend warrior and you're going to buy a house and it takes you all year? You had the money sitting in some account not making you any interest anyways. So I would think there's a lot of things that factor into that.
Some of the follow-up I had with her after the fact was that she was limited on funds. It was a larger project. This was her first, I don't know if I mentioned that, but this was her first fix and flip, and that was her goal. She had never done any type of even work on like her own residence, so she had no experience with even managing subcontractors on her own. So ultimately, my response to her was, number one, I told her to start networking at some of the local RIA groups out there in Cleveland. Mm-hmm. I also pointed her towards Meetup because she might be able to find a contractor there or at least get some ideas on what the cost is going to be. I told her, of course, to get 3 bids, regardless if she's using a GC or she's hiring her own subcontractors. I told her to make sure she doesn't pay any contractor the complete amount due to him or her up front, that everything should be done on some type of a payment plan, and there should be contracts in place, and that she should consult with her own real estate attorney or general business attorney to determine, if she needs lien waivers and how that was going to work in case something were to go sour. And that's kind of the last communication I had with her, which was about a month ago.
I can't think of any reason not to do a joint venture on this kind of a project.
With a contractor?
With another investor, with doubtfully a contractor, unless it's an investor that you met at a RIA club that happens to also be a contractor.
Right.
Because the thing about these contractors, and especially when you start talking about all the subs, your electrician, your plumber, and this and that, if you're talking to an HVAC guy and you don't know what the A coil is,
right,
they smell that in a second, and the price is going to go through the roof. And and even when you get a GC, I would say the same due diligence about a JV partner. The cheapest price isn't always the best avenue.
Right.
And I want to know, what other projects have you done? Have you done projects for other investors? How is the pricing for investors maybe different than what you would charge a retail, customer, if you will.
Sure.
And then, not to get political, but, Trump always talks about how he gets jobs done on time and on budget. Mm-hmm. I'd want to know that you've gotten projects done on time and on budget, because there always seems to be a way that it goes over budget.
Sure.
Right? I mean,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
That happens even if you don't want it to happen. But
if you can keep something under budget, you're an all-star, and that's probably your once-a-year opportunity, depending on how many deals you do. But typically, things don't always go as planned. We'll call it that. We'll say it that way.
And here's my little insider tip on testimonials. A lot of contractors or anybody for that matter, is happy to whip out a phone number or a picture of somebody on a project they did. And, I mean, anybody that's been in business for any period of time can probably find 3 to 5 people that think they're the greatest. So my question when doing the due diligence on their work wouldn't be, hey, do you have anybody you can talk to that you've done work for? My question would be, can I have the names and phone numbers of the last 3 people you did work for?
Sure.
Like, you finished a project 2 weeks ago, right?
Right.
That's the person I want to talk to.
Right.
Not somebody that you did something 3 years ago.
And I think we could probably do a whole nother episode on working with contractors.
Oh, no doubt.
The good, the bad, and the real ugly.
Oh, yeah.
Myself.
I got some ugly if you want ugly.
I got ugly too.
That's for another day.
Lots of, yeah, we could take on another hour, and I've actually considered doing that podcast about how to work with contractors effectively, and some of the things you just pointed out are very important high points on when you're vetting out general contractors and who you're going to choose to work with and why. So maybe we'll bring that back up on another episode.
I think that'd be a good idea.
Next question. This is from Tracy in Algonquin, who actually texted me, and I ended up calling her regarding this question. She initially said, I hear you talk about getting properties via the MLS, sheriff's sale, and county auction, and then also working with wholesalers. I work full-time. What's the best way to get a good deal, or what's the best avenue to find some properties? Is it through the sheriff's sale? So this ended up in a pretty long conversation with this investor or newer investor because sheriff sales, as we've kind of talked about before on the podcast, can be a whole nother animal on due diligence and level of risk when you're buying a property through a county auction where you need to basically present somewhere between 10 and 25% of your winning bid at the time of the auction in cash via cashier's check, and then return back within 24 hours with the balance of the money. Again, a whole nother episode worth of discussion. But
and hold on, this might be not for this question, but as an active participant at those kind of auctions, how would you say those are the same or different than when you watch them on the TV when they're at the auction in California?
Yeah, not the same at all.
Not the same. Imagine that.
That's all for TV, people. Come on. We know that, though.
Okay, well, not everybody knows that, I don't think.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously the stuff you see on TV through these investment TV shows are always made for TV, we'll call it. I think that depending on the real challenge with some of these sheriff sales or county auctions is each situation can be run differently, different requirements, different levels of risk. For example, in our area, you can typically get a deed to a property within 30 to 45 days after the auction. In Florida, my understanding is you get the deed to the property within a few days. Almost all of them require the money to be proposed or presented and deposited into the county account within 24 hours. That also requires physically going there with a cashier's check to deposit that. So you got to have cash in hand. And again, if you've got those type of funds available, is it worth taking that risk? Potentially. That's one avenue to obtain properties for fix and flipping and for building your portfolio. As a new investor, though, I would say I'd probably be spending a lot of time at that auction block, figuring out how it works, understanding the rules, talking to the other attendees, and finding out as much information as possible, because you could make one simple mistake of buying a second mortgage on a property, which typically when you do these sheriff sales, they're selling off first mortgages, which means you get actual rights to the property when you purchase it at auction. But they also sell the second mortgages at these auctions. So if you bid on a second auction because it's only priced at $20,000, if you bid on a second mortgage because it's only priced at $20,000 and you think it's a screaming deal, yet you happen to be the only one in the room that's actually bidding on that property, I'd probably be pretty nervous, because if it's a second, you don't end up with ownership of that property. And you basically just paid off someone else's second mortgage for them. So I don't want to get too much into the sheriff sales side other than saying as a beginning investor, I would definitely have a lot of hesitation in jumping into something like that, though there are opportunities. But if you want to take advantage of those opportunities, you definitely need to spend a lot of time educating yourself on how they work and what level of risk that goes into them and what level of risk you want to take.
So what I hear you saying, Joseph, we were standing at the top of a ski hill and we were talking about the different paths to the bottom.
Right.
The sheriff sales and county sales, that's the Black Diamond run?
That's the Black Diamond, yeah.
Okay.
I would say so. I would say so. That's awesome. So she also asked about finding properties on the MLS and working with wholesalers. I think we touched on the sheriff sale enough. As a full-time employee of another firm and not having the amount of time available to find these opportunities, why, as a wholesaler, why don't you tell us why working with wholesalers could be maybe part of her action plan to buy some more assets?
Well, wholesalers are typically, although not exclusively, going to bring off-market properties. And understand that when a wholesaler is sitting in somebody's living room and agreeing on a price, that seller, in their mind, plans and figures that their house is sold. And I guess what I'm saying is, I'd like to think that 90% of the time, maybe more, of the deals that a wholesaler is going to bring to you are in fact deals. Because if they don't close, then it leaves a bad taste with the seller and all that. So, I mean, you still want to do your due diligence. You still want to, do all the same things you would do on any other deal. I wouldn't say that a wholesale deal is, quote, a better deal than an MLS deal, because I don't think it is. I just think it's an untapped source of potential properties.
Sure.
Because with an MLS deal, everybody that has the internet knows what houses are for sale in what town.
Right.
And the wholesale angle just brings another lane of traffic, if you will.
Exactly. No, and I completely agree, which is why I really love this question. Thank you, Tracy. You need to have different buckets that you're going to be grabbing your properties from if you're trying to grow your real estate investment business. And it doesn't matter if you're working full-time or part-time, or this, being an investor is your brand new full-time gig. Especially so, though, if you do want to make a solid living and income off of it, you're going to have resources to get properties in different ways. And one of them may be working with wholesalers. A second one is going to be having your brokers working with you, finding you opportunities. And then obviously, we talked about sheriff sales. That's obviously an option. There's also online auctions that she did not ask about, but there's several mediums online that you can purchase properties from. Most of the time, those are accessible with a broker as well, so you can get interior access to a property on, let's say, auction.com or Home Search, which is now Xome, Xome. But having multiple ways to build that portfolio or get that property stream coming in, I think, is the key. So the end of her question was, what's the best way to get a good deal? And I think we answered it with saying, well, all of them are good ways to get a good deal.
Absolutely.
And, we got another question we're going to touch on about building a team in a little bit, but having the right people on your team to help you find those deals, I think, is the key.
The other thing that I might add is that buying at a sheriff's sale, there's no opportunity to build a relationship with somebody.
True.
So remember we were talking about pocket listings that realtors have?
Yep.
You think it's possible the same thing happens when wholesalers have deals?
Sure.
And that's built out of relationships, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So when you have people that have bought from you before, and this is the area of town they like to buy in, and this is a good deal and it's in their wheelhouse, if you find yourself on some wholesalers' buyers lists and you wonder if they're doing any business because you don't get many properties sent to you via email, a lot of those are probably being passed off to people that they know and people that have approached them and said, hey, if you find something, I want it, and things like that, too.
Absolutely. No, totally makes sense. So relationships being key, I think, is what Dan brought up as well. Maintaining, building, and working and staying in front of the people that, whether it be the broker or a wholesaler, creating them and staying in front of them and developing and building that relationship. And that's going to help everybody involved in that process, either make money or increase their real estate investment business. So we're going to take a quick break from our Q&A session just to talk about next week's meeting in Schaumburg, Illinois, for the investment group, the meetup group that I run here, the Investor Empowerment Series, which you can find on meetup.com. We've got special guest Chris Emerald from CE Law is going to be talking about asset protection for investors. Chris and I have known each other for a few years, and he's assisted me with multiple transactions on the buy and sell side. And I think anyone who's interested in forming an LLC or has questions about liability regarding real estate investing really should try to make it to this meeting if you're in the area. A meeting scheduled for November 29th at 6 p.m. at the Westwood Tavern in Schaumburg. Again, that's Tuesday, November 29th at 6 p.m. If you can make it, please sign up online at meetup.com. Search for Investor Empowerment Series. You'll find us on there. All right, thanks. Back to Joe and Dan.
Already in progress.
All right, we're back from our commercial break now. We got a couple more questions to go before we wrap this thing up. Dan, again, thanks for spending the time with me today and yucking it up.
Absolutely. If you can't have fun, why do it?
What kind of candy is that you're eating now?
This is my lunch, Joe. I think this is saltwater taffy.
Oh, good for you.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I don't know if you noticed that, but I don't maintain this physique skipping meals.
All right, I got a question from Stan B. This came in via email. Stan is asking, or stating, you've mentioned if you find a deal, you find the money. If I find a deal and I don't have the money, how do I find it?
That's wholesaling.
Is it?
Yeah, if you find a deal and you don't have the money, you wholesale it.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's one way to complete the transaction.
No, I'm only half kidding. Yeah, people do say that, don't they?
I've said it before. Yeah.
Oh, if you find a deal, the money will come.
I've said it before, yes.
I think a lot of that is true, and I think it has a lot to do with the network of people that you've gotten to know.
Absolutely.
Because I don't think if you're if you just came off a weekend boot camp and you went to your first RIA meeting and you met two people and one was new like you and the other one you didn't like, and then you come across a deal on the MLS that you put it under contract and you put down $1,000 or $2,000 of earnest money and then hope you're going to find the money, hope's not really a method.
Right.
So I think when people say that, they kind of say that loosely. I would say that's a term used for not necessarily seasoned investors, but investors who have done deals, have relationships, know people, so that they find a great deal. They have people they can go to and say, I got this great opportunity. I can buy a house for $72,000. Here's my scope of work. It's going to need $33,000 to fix it up. We'll be all in it for this. Here's all the comps that it'll sell for. And, this is a real soft, light, pitch maybe to a private money person. Mm-hmm. But someone that you've worked with before and those numbers make sense, they go, yeah, that sounds great. When do you need the money?
Right.
So I think that's what people mean when they say, if you find the deal, the money will come.
And I've seen before at some of these group meetings as well where a newer investor who's 100% honest will stand up in front of the room. Actually, even at our meetup, we've got that deal wants needs section, which at the end we let investors stand up and kind of pitch their properties they may have found that they want to wholesale, or maybe an opportunity they've got their hands on they need assistance with, whether it be the money or maybe just a partner to get things done. But yeah, I've been at meetings before where investors have stood up and said, hey, I've been trying to find a property for the last 3 months. I got this great opportunity, at ABC, 123 ABC Street, and I don't have the money to close the deal. I mean, do you think that's a viable way? If you present an opportunity in front of a large group of people, I know you just touched on it, but I mean, if the numbers really do make sense, or you can verify them, like you mentioned $33,000 as your scope of work. Well, obviously, any investor who's got experience, who's going to be working with somebody who maybe doesn't, and now we're kind of venturing into the joint or the JV joint venture topic we touched on, but they're probably going to complete a lot of due diligence to figure out if they even want to be a part of that deal. But I think there might be a viable way to turn it into something if the numbers are accurate and that investor has brought a good opportunity to the table.
And for a first-time person, too, hard money's not a bad way to go.
Sure.
And one of the reasons that hard money's a good way to go is because they're going to do some due diligence. So
Absolutely.
So,
Let's touch on the hard money company or the hard money lender is going to do a lot of due diligence before they're going to issue the money to close or rehab that property.
Yeah, I mean, sales, I've heard sales defined as the transfer of enthusiasm. So if I come to you, Joe, and I go, oh, Joe, I got this great deal, and I go on and on about it, I can get you all excited about it.
Sure.
And it may not really be a very good deal. But I presented it in such a way that you got excited about it, and that wouldn't happen with you, of course, because you're a seasoned investor. But maybe if I ran to a family member with this great deal,
sure,
they don't know. Right. They're taking you at your word. And the nice thing about a hard money lender is they're going to go through the comps, they're going to go through everything, and they may come back to you and say, we don't see the numbers working the way you do. We're not going to loan on this.
Right.
And that might be the best phone call you ever get.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Really?
Works both ways.
Yeah.
Because they're doing you a favor as well.
Absolutely.
And actually, the last episode for the podcast was the episode number 20, Private Money versus Hard Money. And I actually get into a little more detail on... Oh, of course, you listened to it, right?
Of course.
Yeah, you just forgot. Private Money versus Hard Money, that's IES Radio number 20. That's the one right before this one. We talk about the difference between what private money is, what hard money is, and how it can work in your real estate investment business. So if you want more information on hard money, you could always click back one episode. But yeah, I think that's a good answer, and I think that's a good solution. It all starts with relationships, honestly, and it all ends with relationships, I think, in real estate. So finding opportunities, whether it be properties or money, you need to continue to build relationships and know the right people that are going to work with you in order to succeed in the business. And that's why those relationships can be so important, because they can really excel you from a guy who flips one house, or a guy or gal who flips one house per year, to somebody that does 10, 15, or maybe more per year.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, maybe I just don't know these solopreneurs that go out there and make it all happen, and they don't need anything or anybody. They got it all under control. Maybe those people are out there, but we wouldn't know them because they don't network. Mm-hmm. But I've seen too many positive things come out of relationships that I've built over time in the local market that
great.
I can't say enough about it.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Hopefully that answers your question, Stan B. All right. Next question. This came from Alex. I'm a newer investor, and I was able to borrow $100,000 from a family member to get started. I really don't want to screw up this opportunity. And
Neither does your family.
Shouldn't laugh at. I really don't want to screw up this opportunity, and I need some guidance. What would you recommend for my first investment?
I think you touched on this on one of your earlier podcasts, Joe. If you have $100,000, you have money and you don't have any skills.
Sure.
You may want to, I think you talked about this, you may want to use that money to be a private money lender on somebody else's deal, with the caveat that you're going to kind of ride shotgun and, maybe you're willing to give a little better interest rate than they might get somewhere else in exchange for, let me come alongside you.
Yeah.
I'd like to be there for inspections. I'd like to be there when you talk to contractors. I'd like to, it could be a great learning experience.
Shadow the process.
Absolutely.
No, I do agree. And I think the question regarding, what we would recommend on the first investment, I mean, that's kind of hard to answer in this format, at least, because I don't know what your goals are. I don't know what type of business you're trying to build and how many properties you want in your rental portfolio or how many flips you plan on doing, if it's 1 a year or 10 a year like we touched on the last question.
Right. Are you looking to flip a place? Are you looking to buy a rental place?
I think a lot of investors come into the game wanting to get in the fix and flip market, we'll call it. Fix and flip.
Yeah, that's sexy. That's on TV. It must
That's
be
what's
fun.
on TV.
But you make a lot of money doing that, don't you?
Absolutely right. Sometimes. And as the business grows or as their experience level increases, whether they realize it or they educate themselves more, they come to the fact that they need to consider having rental properties as well as part of a good real estate business or investment strategy, we'll call it, because it's one piece of the pie for what your potential future could be like, whether that's a retirement income from rental properties or you want to make a full-time job and business out of fix and flipping. So I don't know. I suppose if I was a brand new investor all over again with $100,000, I like what Dan brought up. Working with other investors, potentially utilizing yourself as a private money lender and shadowing that process, building relationships as a result. Maybe some more opportunities will come out of that, and you'll be able to really educate yourself without that cost. Not only will you make money in that process, but you're not necessarily paying someone else to teach it to you. You're going to be hands-on, one-on-one with another investor who's got that experience level. And a lot of guys out there, I think, you don't even necessarily have to be the private money lender. So maybe the ultimate answer to this question, Alex, is start talking to guys who are out there doing what you want to do and present yourself to them that you're willing to assist, you're willing to help out. Maybe you've got some type of skill set that they need that you can assist somehow, some way, whether it be, cutting the grass or, helping clean up a property once a fix and flip is completed, and, work with them continuously and not necessarily be in their face, but be present as much as possible to try to, keep their attention and learn from them as much as you can as you're beginning your investment career.
I mean, that's what I'm doing.
Oh, yeah?
What time did you call me today and ask me if I could go meet the guys dropping off the cabinets at one of your properties?
That's true. No. I exploited Dan today because I had a doctor's appointment that I had to be at, and my cabinets were getting delivered during the doctor's appointment, so I called Dan to step in and help me out and be the guy that accepted the delivery. So thank you for that.
No problem.
Yeah. It's a tag team game.
Yeah, it is. See, there you go. But there's relationships.
Absolutely.
If you didn't know me, you would have had to call somebody else, and maybe they would have been busy.
That's true. That's true. Let's see. We're going to move on to another question here. And I really I think we can go a long way on this one, so let's see what we can do with it. I hear people talk about building my power team, in quotes. What's a power team? Do I need one? And how do I start building one? So, power team, what does that mean to you, Dan?
Well, I just, figure I'm like the nucleus, and there's people surrounding me in different aspects of what I need in real estate. So, to be an investor, it's probably important that I have a real estate attorney. It's probably important that I have a real estate agent or 2 or 5. It might be important that I have general contractors that I know. I might want to know a handful of subcontractors, be it plumbers, electricians, drywallers, painters, etc. The power team might be the relationship. I have a nice relationship with the pro team over at Lowe's.
Absolutely.
They're part of my team.
Suppliers.
Suppliers. Where do you get your cabinets? Where do you get your supplies?
Absolutely.
And it's really just kind of I just figure my power team, my team is every aspect of being in real estate that I have to rely on somebody else to do that I can't do myself.
Right.
Like I can't represent myself as a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I don't fabricate my own cabinets. I need to get them from somebody. So
right.
All the people that I need to pull things together are the people that I would say are on my quote power team.
I really love what you said. Two more things I want to add to that. One is an insurance guy.
Oh, insurance guy.
Okay, I want to touch on that a little more in depth in a second. And possibly a mentor. Again, as you start to meet people, unknowingly you may be being mentored as you become an investor or you're up in your game and gaining more experience as a real estate investor. But typically, I know Dan can attest. We're back and forth on the phone with each other on a regular basis. We're bouncing ideas off each other. So I'm not going to say he's mentoring me or I'm mentoring him, but we're definitely sharing our ideas together to try to create better solutions for both of our investment businesses. So again, back to relationships, but a mentor could be someone on your team.
Sure.
Finding one, my initial answer is going to be the same as we've said almost on every question.
That's a whole nother podcast.
It is a whole nother podcast. But, that could be RIA groups or meetups, meeting the right people, building relationships.
Sure.
Taking a step back to the attorney on your team and the insurance guy. Real important stuff here that I feel like the glamour of TV excludes from a lot of these fix and flip television shows is you really, really need to establish a plan with a business, whether you're going to be an LLC or an S Corp or a C Corp, whatever type of entity you're going to do your business in, number one. Number two, however you're going to hold those assets, whether it be in that entity or you're going to have separate LLCs or maybe land trusts. All things that you need to consult with an attorney on. You should really be doing that up front before you start buying property. If you're brand new at this, you may not get the type of response that you're looking for from a random attorney that you pull out of the phone book. So that's why, again, you need to talk to other investors and see who maybe they've had good experiences with. But you got to have an attorney on your team. He's got to help build that plan, because next thing you know, you could have 3, 4, 5 properties you're either flipping or converting into your rental portfolio. And if something happens and you weren't structured correctly, you really could be up shit creek.
Without a paddle.
Without a paddle. Also, insurance. I think that's a very overlooked aspect of what goes on in real estate investing. This has to be true with 90% of even the listeners. I mean, what do you do when you buy a property? What do you do when you need insurance? Just tell me, simple answer. No tricks.
I'm not proud about it.
Okay.
I called my agent that carries my auto insurance and insurance I have on my house.
Exactly.
And, I'll be willing to share a little side story. It's important that your real estate agent, your insurance agent knows what it is you're doing specifically. And I think I did a good job of explaining it to my guy. But my guy sells life insurance and everything else. So
right.
I don't think, he didn't steer me wrong on purpose. But, I was going to do a property, and early on he said, well, we can insure that. A lot of people have a second home by the lake or,
right.
a hunting cabin. So we're going to treat this as like a second home. So we'll insure it under that and you'll be covered. And I go, hey, that sounds great. And the insurance was inexpensive. And thankfully, because of an insurance person I met at RIA that is deep into working with investors, I met, of course he was looking for some business. I told him, I got it covered. He goes, I doubt it. I go, well, I go, well, you don't even know what I got. He goes, well, who's your insurance? And I go, well, my guy. He goes, okay, well, maybe you want to send me a copy of your policy and I'll take a look at it. And when he called me after I sent it to him, I was nervous beyond belief, because he pointed out 6 ways to Sunday my exposure for liability if people are getting hurt at my house. The coverage and the umbrellas and whatever else that my guy put on a second property, treating it like a lake house, wasn't really designed to do a gut rehab that I was doing.
Right.
So,
no, that's a great point, and I think that was the whole reason why I wanted to bring it up, is because most people, and whether they're investors or not, most people, they buy a second property, they call their guy, and they tell their guy a little bit about it, and boom, they've got homeowners insurance, and they close on the property. But the real end of the caveat to that whole story is there's a lot more that goes into the type of risk that you're taking on, your own as well as that insurance companies, when you get a property and you insure it. So you really have to include an insurance guy in your team and explain to him or her exactly what you're doing. There's some policies out there, such as builder's risk, which can cover everything from the structure itself, the tools inside, to the contractors who may get hurt in the process, who could end up suing you. And the other half would be, when you just get your regular second home type insurance, or you just call your guy and have him insure a property for you, that you're very, very rarely, in rare situations, you're actually going to be covered for those types of instances, minus like maybe a fire or, a tree falling on the garage or something like that. Even on standard like rental policies, I know with the guy that I used on a lot of the properties I was buying when I was first getting started, none of the basements were covered for any type of problem with my insurance guy. So yeah, I had a property flood due to a failed sump pump, and when I call him to invoke the policy, he said, "Oh, well, you're not covered on, you're not covered on flooded basements. Sump pump failed. No, sorry, you're not covered. The basement wasn't covered." And the funny thing about that is, if we take a step back, these insurance guys, they're in the business of selling insurance. So if you're properly explaining yourself to whatever insurance guy you're going to use, they should be telling you, like, oh, you need this, you need that, you need policy A, you need policy B, you need an umbrella, you need business liability insurance. And I think a lot of that fault is coming back to the fact that the investor themselves are not necessarily truly explaining what they're doing. And that's my opinion. I could be wrong on that, but
Hey, here's an idea. Maybe when you go to the next RIA meeting and there's someone that in the room that is an accomplished investor and maybe is leading the group, might be a good idea to say, hey, I'm thinking about buying an investment property. Do you have an insurance agent that you might recommend, or would you tell me, like what kind of coverages that would be important that I have?
Sure.
Because sometimes, like when I didn't know what I didn't know.
Absolutely. And
I'm relying on my guy, but just because he's, maybe some people can relate to this. It's kind of like if you have that, 15-year-old car with 180,000 miles. In the state of Illinois, you need car insurance.
Right.
But sometimes people will put a policy, what do they call it, comprehensive, which means I'm insured if I hit you.
Right.
Right. But if I run my own car into a tree or something, there's no replacement. They're not gonna. There's no money to fix the car, replace the car, because they're not insuring that.
Right. So you're protecting the not individual that could be involved in the crash.
Right. So there's insurance is complicated.
Yes.
And let's face it, we're all. We're not all. I can tell you, I am. I'm always looking. Insurance is one of those things we hate. You got to have it, and you don't want to spend money on it because it's not very sexy. And you're caught in a wedge because you're aware that your agent is paid a commission. So they have every incentive to layer you with more insurance than you'll ever need in your life for anything.
Right.
And so it's really important through talking to other investors to kind of really get an idea of what coverages you really need or don't need, or specifically talk to several different insurance agents that work with investor clients.
Right. And what I completely agree. And what I've been told is the best first line of defense in any type of situation is actually the insurance policy. So we talk about LLCs, we talk about asset protection,
right.
hiding hiding ownership, or not hiding necessarily, but keeping ownership off public record, to prevent attorneys from fishing you out and trying to sue you for different things, whatever. But the best defense is a solid insurance policy. So in my opinion, I'm not an insurance salesman, but I think that there's something to be said about talking to your insurance guy correctly and building up those correct layers so you are protected.
That might be a great topic for the for the meetup at the Westwood.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that. All right. Anything else on that? Building the power team?
Oh no, I don't think so.
Okay, cool.
But I think anybody that's on your team, you kind of want to treat it like a manager treats a pitching staff. The guy on the mound is your main guy, but you might want to have a couple guys stacked up in the bullpen, because if you only have one plumber and you have a big job and he's busy,
absolutely,
you're out of business.
Sure. All right, I know you guys are gonna be disappointed, but we have one more question left.
I hope it's a good one.
We'll see.
You saved the best for last, I hope.
Maybe.
Maybe not.
All right, this one's from Jonathan. Jonathan is an active investor that I've actually met. We did a couple deals, actually, and we had a discussion a couple weeks back, and one of the things that came out of it was his question regarding wholesaling. Jonathan asked me, why is wholesaling pitched as the gateway drug to real estate? Yeah.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, and what does that mean?
It's... I giggle about this because, all the big education groups that come through town and try to rally everybody up to get in their programs, for some reason they always go under this assumption that you have no money and no credit.
Right.
And
right.
I'm not sure why that is. So, actually it's kind of sad because people with no money and no credit figure, well, I can get into wholesaling, which is only partially true. Because, the old adage is you have to spend money to make money. So,
right.
There's certainly, there's free ways to find leads like FSBOs and Craigslist and all that. But to do any kind of significant business, you're going to have to do some marketing, whether it be letters and postcards and bandit signs and, pay-per-click and Facebook. And there's a variety of ways to spend money. But the point is you got to spend money to do it.
Absolutely.
The other thing they pitch is normally wholesaling is pitched as an educational forum. So certainly you can learn about it, on podcasts and Bigger Pockets and all sorts of other things. But a lot of times there's gurus, etc., and they're selling kind of a system on how to get started in wholesaling, what you do, and maybe supply you some contracts and do all that. And like anything that people are selling you, if they told you how hard it was, would you spend $2,000 for the program? I doubt it.
Right.
And so they pitch it as it's easy. And it sets the wrong expectation because people go at it and the failure rate is so high because it's way harder than they ever thought it was going to be. And most people don't have the tenacity to go, well, I'm going to do whatever I got to do, but I'm going to do a deal and I'm going to get it done.
Right.
So, it kind of goes back to that earlier email or person that we talked about that said, hey, I have $100,000 to start with.
Right.
There isn't any reason in the world why that person needs to start with wholesaling.
Right.
That person is positioned to buy a property, rent a property, fix and flip a property, and not even think about wholesaling.
Absolutely.
I agree. I guess when we say gateway drug, the way they kind of pitch it is, well, you don't have any money, so you start wholesaling. And then you make money wholesaling, so then you have enough money that you can do a fix and flip. Mm-hmm. Then you make a bunch of money doing fix and flips. Then you'll have money that you can buy houses outright and own them.
Right.
And most people never get to the second point because they never made enough wholesaling money to get to the next thing. Absolutely. So you don't need to start there. You can heck, if you have a big fat 401k at your corporate job that's underperforming,
Absolutely.
And you move that into a self-directed IRA, you can become a private money lender, and you're in real estate.
Making 9, 10, 12% plus some points maybe.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that you touched on that I want to elaborate on is there is cost involved, like you said, this no money, no credit concept. That's great, and yeah, there are some free ways, as Dan mentioned. You brought up Craigslist and things like that. But if you're going to do a yellow letter campaign, for example, which is a huge, huge source of what people, are teaching, yellow letters, which is great. Yellow letters do work. I think any mailing piece can work, depending on how it's drafted and maybe the color paper that it's on. There's all a bunch of psychology on that I don't know enough about.
And you have to do more than one mailing. You can't just
that's what I was going to get
at. You can't do a spray and pray.
How much we know from experience, how much is a yellow letter? One yellow letter, right.
$1.
About $1, right. Maybe a little cheaper. You may be able to cut a few cents off of it, but the letter itself, printed, when it looks like it's handwritten, plus postage, plus the envelope, everything on it, you're about $1 out the door. So if you want to do 500 mailers, you're at $500. And a lot of these wholesalers or newer investors get started in wholesaling and they'll do one campaign, or they'll do one mailing one time, maybe keep it up for another month or two. But with wholesaling, a lot of this is about being consistent and that letter popping up in that mailbox 3, 4, 7, 8 times, right? Isn't that like the basics of marketing, like 7 touches?
As you're talking, Joe, I'm reminded, do you know what it really is? It goes, you have to take one step back from everything we're talking about right now. If you are married or in any kind of committed relationship or what have you, I think it's critically important that you get your spouse or significant other fully on board with it, what it is you're going to do. Because when it comes to this wholesaling, here's the way I see it going out. Somebody goes to some real estate meeting and gets all excited, and they come home and they get all excited, and they tell their spouse, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make a lot of money, it's going to be great. And of course, if you told that to a stranger, that'd be great, except the people that are closest to you, they know you the best, and they're thinking about that diet you said you were going to do and didn't really come through. They talked about how you were going to...
Why got to bring up diet?
You talked about how you were going to start running a marathon, and then you never did your first 5K. So when you tell them this, they go, oh, here we go again. And
right.
No, it's going to be different this time. So you take $1,000 and you do a mailer.
Right.
And because you're new and your skills aren't there yet, you're not asking the right questions, you maybe a beautiful deal is served up right up and down the middle, but you don't see it for what it is, so it goes by you. And long story short, $1,000 later, bunch of letters out, no deal.
Right.
A lot of people go, this doesn't work, and then they quit.
Sure.
Then the aggressive ones go, oh, no, I heard you should do this again. Mm-hmm. And so maybe they mail it again.
Right.
And maybe some actually do it the third time. and they still haven't made any money. And if they don't have a significant other that they do life with that's behind them and believes in them, that's about the time you get the whack in the side of the head and they go, Joe, you idiot, you pissed away $3,000 on this bullshit real estate. We could have went on a nice vacation for $3,000. And then that's kind of the beginning of the end of being a real estate investor.
Sure.
So I would say start with the end in mind and, get a budget and determine that this is your plan of action until something actually happens.
Love it. Okay, great. I appreciate that detailed answer. Yeah, I completely completely agree.
Don't you see it going that way?
Totally makes sense.
I mean, I think instead of doing TV shows on fix and flipping, they ought to do a TV show of aspiring real estate investors and a hidden camera of the arguments they're having with their spouses at home. Now, there's a TV show.
The Real Housewives of Real Estate Investors.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, Dan. Well, that's all the questions that I was able to compile together for our podcast today.
I think those are some good questions and
Absolutely.
Some things that a lot of people, if some of these questions were right up your alley, I can almost be sure that there's some aspects of what we talked about that people go, I never really thought about that, particularly that insurance thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That gets overlooked. Nobody talks about that.
Sure.
I've been to a lot of RIA meetings. I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about the value and the importance of being covered properly with insurance.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, no one talks about it.
Yeah.
Which is why I think it was good to bring it up as, when you're developing that quote-unquote power team, consider the right insurance company or insurance guy. And it might not be, your local neighborhood insurance guy who happens to have a store in the strip mall, right by your house. It might be something a little more specialized. There's different types of policies for investors, and you really got to explore those routes. And sometimes attorneys are good resources to determine what type of insurance you need because they kind of help structure your asset protection plan, and insurance is going to be part of that. So they might be a resource to find some insurance guys. One guy we didn't bring up, accountant. We didn't talk about that.
That's funny you mention that, Joe.
Is your accountant calling you right now? I see your phone's ringing.
No, I need an accountant.
Yeah, so
if there's anybody listening here that's a real estate expert that is an accountant or has one they can recommend to me locally in the Chicago area, I'd sure like to know about it.
Yeah, and I hate to go backwards on a question because we were about to wrap it up, but no, well, accountants and insurance guys, I should have lumped them together with. You really, really need to explain to your accountant what you're doing as well. So just like that insurance guy might need to create the different layers of protection for your insurance defense plan, we'll call it, the accountant is going to be your defense plan against the IRS, either gouging out more fees from you or potentially auditing you in the future, getting the right deductions, when you're owning rental property and tax depreciation. There's so many aspects that go into the accounting side and the taxation side of real estate in particular. Make sure you've got an accountant who knows real estate, who's experienced, who's worked with investors that own multiple properties or have done fix and flips, because that can really make or break an investor, I think, honestly. The amount of taxation that you can get charged at the end of the year. I mean, you better be sitting on a big fat chunk of money if you haven't paid any taxes on the 5 fix and flips you've had, depending on what your entity structuring is like.
So, Joe, what I think I hear you saying non-verbally is if you have if you've been doing some real estate deals and some flips and maybe hold a couple rental properties, you might not want to go to H&R Block on Saturday.
Right.
or who's the guy that stands out dressed, I don't know what company it is, that dresses like the Statue of Liberty on the corner?
Yeah, that might be them.
That might not be the best place to go.
Liberty Tax, yeah, I've seen them.
And they might be. I'm not saying they're not, but I'm saying the hunch is that's for people that have a very simple life with a W-2 job. Right. And, oh, yeah, by the way, my spouse has a W-2 job, and we have 2 kids and a mortgage, and they prepared for you in 45 minutes, and you're out the door.
Absolutely. And that, again, I would say definitely no TurboTax for that type of situation. One house, okay. Couple houses, fix and flips, you definitely need to consult with an accountant, so add them to your team.
Look at all the new RIA topics we're coming up with.
I know. I need to listen to this podcast again. But again, thanks again, Dan, for being on the show with me today, co-hosting.
Yeah, fun to be here. Always
radio show.
Look, I got as much value out of this as I think anybody listening, because we talked about a couple of things that frankly I haven't really considered in some time, and I made a couple of mental notes about a few things I probably need to shore up in my own business.
Right. And I'll be sure to cut you that check for co-hosting today.
Oh, I thought so. There wasn't any lunch, so maybe...
You got candy!
That's true. I had saltwater taffy. Thanks, Joe. On the back end of this, I'm thinking about a lot of the things we talked about, and then I'm thinking about what I see as one of the, I don't know, in my opinion, maybe the biggest downfall I see in aspiring real estate investors, and that's that they're always in a mode where they're getting ready to get ready, and based on podcasts like this or RIA meetings they go to, and I think I speak for myself, in the beginning I felt like there's just so much I don't know. And I'm hoping that next webinar, that next 3-day boot camp, that next RIA meeting is going to bring it all into focus, and I'll finally have all the things I need. And it's been my experience, I don't think you're ever going to have all the things you need. So that's why my advice to most people is jump off the building and grow wings on the way down.
Sure.
And that's where, when you get to these, crossroads, hey, what do I do here? Even a lot of the stuff I heard early on when I went to some of these seminars and stuff, when you're not actively doing those things, it all sounds good, but it doesn't really mean a lot because you're not actually doing what they're talking about. And once you start doing things, then you go, oh yeah, I remember hearing about that. And it kind of all, it starts coming together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, great point.
So take action, I guess, is really what I want to say out of all this. And by going to RIA groups and forming relationships, you have people to call when you have a question or you get in a jam.
Absolutely. So let's really wrap it up this time, since you just got like the extra excerpts from the podcast show. So let's do a little bit more self-plugging, how you can get some more information. If you'd like to ask a question to either myself or Dan for a future podcast or just in general, because I will respond and so will Dan if we do get questions from investors, whether you're new or seasoned, you can email them to joe@tanisgroupllc.com, joe@tanisgroupllc.com. I will be sure to respond to your questions and maybe present them on a podcast. If you're interested in getting more information on the meetup group that I hold, you can go to I can't remember, investor-empowerment-chicago.com. That's for my meetup group, and Dan actually hosts a meetup group as well. So why don't you talk about that real quick? How do they get a hold of you?
Well, they can get a hold of me. They can
email me, and then I'll forward it to you.
Yeah, you can email Joe and forward it to me, or to keep it simple, my name is Dan Clarton, CLARTON, @gmail.com.
What about the meetup group, though?
So my meetup group kind of started, it'll be we're coming up on 2 years now. Awesome. And so many of these RIA groups, like yours, Joe, meet once a month. And I just found for myself in the beginning, because I was kind of going at it alone, and I needed some camaraderie of people doing what I was doing more than once a month. And so my group actually started meeting every Tuesday night. And it was kind of positioned not as an educational forum, and nobody's teaching you anything. We're not selling education and programs and books and tapes and all that. It was merely a meetup group, and let's get together. Let's, instead of some guys sit around and talk fantasy football for hours on end. Right. Let's get together and talk about real estate. Absolutely. Let's talk about deals we're doing. Let's talk about things that we've heard. What about this? What do you know about this? And it was also kind of positioned... truthfully, it's kind of gone away from that, but it was originally kind of positioned as an action and accountability group, because I think it's important to continue to do some vision casting, because I found for myself, and I saw it in others, is that you go to that RIA meeting once a month and you get your bucket of vision and excitement full, and then you go home, you go back to work, and you get back to the kids, and next thing you know, it's a month later, and you realize, I haven't done anything in real estate. And I know this is going to come as a shock to some people, but going to RIA meetings, that's not being in real estate. Being in real estate is what happens after you go to those meetings, and you actually make offers on houses, and you go look at houses, and you buy houses, and then you're actually in real estate. Right. So
you're holding yourself. Your group was designed essentially to hold yourself accountable for those goals you were setting.
Yeah, and I give you a prime example. And one of the guys, Josh, he came and goes, Yeah, he goes, I got to start marketing. I want to do some off-market stuff. I'm going to order some bandit signs. Well, next week I said, Josh, did you order bandit signs? He goes, yep. He goes, I ordered them. Excellent. The following week, I go, Josh, did you get your bandit signs? Yeah. He goes, yep, they just came in. He goes, this weekend I'm going to go put 50 out. I go, nice going. That's awesome. The next week he came and go, Josh, did you put out 50? He goes, no. I put out 75.
Yes!
I go, that's what I'm talking about. So, we're there to encourage each other and root each other on, and that's kind of the focus of my group. So my group has never been evaluated by me anyways, maybe by others, but I don't measure it by how many people come.
Right.
I measure it by the people that come and what they're doing and the friendships and relationships that we're building along the way.
It sounds like a real estate addicts anonymous support group to me.
Yeah, I think it could be called that.
Awesome.
I think I should reposition it.
All right. Now we're really ending the podcast. Thanks for all your listens today. You can rate us on iTunes. Send me any feedback. Give me some stars. Whatever. Go on YouTube. It's all over the place. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. Be sure to tune in next week for another empowering episode. We welcome your feedback, so please rate us on iTunes and Stitcher, and visit us at www.investorempowermentchicago.com or tennisgrouprealty.com.